Some while ago, I was reading from Canto 1, Chapter 9, and we didn't finish the chapter, so I thought to continue where we left off. And the section that just completed or covered was the inevitable time or invincible time or irreversible time, and how time influences things. And because it's time influencing things, that the Yudhishthir and the Pandavas and Queen Kunti should not lament. I'll just read a few verses. In my opinion, this is all that's the difficulties that the Pandavas underwent and Kunti underwent. I'll read starting at text 13. As far as my daughter-in-law, Kunti is Bhishmadev's daughter-in-law, as far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, that's his brother, and then the wife is his daughter-in-law, or she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you, Yudhishthir, were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control and everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. The commentary is saying Yudhishthir shouldn't feel that it's because of his sins, it's inevitable time. And circumstances were created by time, not in response to his sins. Or even his previous birth, sins in his previous birth. That's not so. That's confirmed by the great authority Bhishmadev. Text 15, oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. So that's now text 16 and the purport. O King, addressing Yudhishthir, no one can know the plan of the Lord Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Purport. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthir over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthir that since time immemorial no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So, what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. Best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishmadev was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhisthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishmadev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because, again, the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. So there's layers and layers and layers. And it's not if, one of the layers is not the bottom layer, so it's negated or discredited or unimportant. There's multiple things going on at the same time, in other words. So one of those multiple things that Prabhupada mentioned specifically was that Bhishmadev could have, but didn't, stop and speak up against the defiling of Draupadi. He could have. He didn't. Now, why didn't he? Well, by the plan of the Lord, his mind was bewildered, and so he didn't. And the Lord wanted to show, Prabhupada writes in his purports in this chapter, even a great personality like Grandfather Bhishma, if you fail to protect women, then you're in great difficulty. You'll have to suffer. It's a Vedic principle. Now, why didn't he? The plan of the Lord. Because the Lord wanted to teach, and so he did. Another layer, why did he stay on the side of the Kauravas, although he knew they were diabolical? He knew everything. And he stood by a principle, that's a Vedic principle, but although he's a Mahajan, there's higher principles above the following principle. You're maintained, and therefore you're obliged to assist those who maintain you. He was of the royal family, aside from his stature as Mahajan, he was of the royal family. His father was Santanu, and he's of the royal family. And because he had taken this vow to not marry, he wasn't the king. And because he was maintained by the king, he's obliged to assist his maintainer. Now, he could have stepped aside from being maintained by diabolical people, but he didn't. And one of the reasons he didn't is pointed out here. Krishna wanted to show, if you don't fight on the right side, you'll be destroyed. Even if you're great. How powerful a fighter was Bhishma? More powerful, or as powerful as Parshuram. Undefeatable by Parshuram. Parshuram. Unable to defeat Bhishma. On the 30th day, or whatever the number is, demigods in the morning informed Parshuram, you can't kill him. One of the Vasus. So lay down your weapons. So he laid down his weapons, and Bhishmadev came and surrendered to Parshuram, but the fighting was over. Because you can't kill Bhishma. Can't kill Bhishma. So don't even try. He said, you can't defeat him. So Bhishma was so powerful that Parshuram couldn't defeat him. he was defeated on a principle that you fight on the wrong side and you can't be victorious. You will also be destroyed. So, then comes, well, what's the right side and the wrong side? And then there's laws of morality and laws of the Vedas. And then ultimately, what's the will of the Supreme Lord? So as Bhishmadev was on the wrong side, and as Bhishmadev didn't speak up to stop the defiling of Draupadi by the arrangement of Krishna wanted to show. So his fighting on the wrong side was to show. Even your Bhishma, you can't be victorious. So now, that's the plan of the Lord. This inevitable time from the previous verses. Time, what is time? Time is a Shakti, Kala Shakti, that moves things. And there's not the only Shakti of the Lord that moves things. There's other Shaktis of the Lord that moves things. But in the whole orchestration, there's the internal potency, that's eternal time. And then there's the reflection or expansion that's also under Krishna's direction of time as we know it, past, present, future time. And that's under Krishna's direction too. It's under the potency of his internal potency, who has eternal time as one of her sub-potencies, and the expansion of that internal potency's eternal time is time as we know it. In other words, it's a downstream cause and effect connection. Krishna is not directly with his hands on the steering wheel and the control levers moving inevitable time or past, present, future time. But it's under his adhyaksha or supervision that things happen. And then there's multiple other sub-potencies that are moving things along a certain direction. Now, trying to understand all that in terms of our limitedness may make one reach the conclusion, oh, this is silly, or it's incomprehensible. And then the incomprehensible becomes appreciated by those who have faith in the Supreme Lord. And then to understand the movements of the Supreme Lord, which is being said here, don't try to understand the plan of the Lord, because you can't understand the plan of the Lord. Here he is revealing the plan of the Lord, at least to some degree. The Lord's plan can be understood through devotion, through pure devotion. And then there can be multiple, not only one, plans of the Lord at play. So that's certainly allowed. If one great personality says, you can't know, and the same great personality, Bhishma, says, here's the plan, then another great personality says, here's the plan, another great personality says, here's the plan, and they don't match up, doesn't mean one's wrong because the other one's right. There can be multiple understandings of a transcendental reality. That's part of the mystery of Bhagavan and the mystery of Bhagavatam. You can't know the plan of the Lord, but here's the plan of the Lord. He wanted to show. And so he did. And one of the mediums from the previous verses is through the force of time. Time was moving things. And time was moving Bhishmadev's forgetfulness or selecting the wrong option from the menu of priorities, because there are some priorities that supersede other priorities. And a great soul, and Bhishmadev is such a great soul, Mahajano Yena Katasa Panta. One should know which is to be prioritized when there's complexity and apparent conflict in Dharma, what is to be done. in a given situation, it can be perplexing because there's many factors, and how do you assess those many factors? This is one of those questions, well-known one. When Yudhishthira saw his 4 brothers lying by the side of the lake as if dead because they drank or tried to drink water from the lake without responding to the yaksha. Yudhishthira responded to the yaksha. Before you drink, you have to answer my questions. Yes. So one of those questions was, it's very difficult to understand the complexities of what is to be done, what is not to be done. Or as it's saying here, what is the right path, what is the wrong path? It's complex. How is one to understand? When there's apparent conflicts, do this, don't do this. Do that, don't do that, etc. Well, how do you reconcile? How do you go forward? Yudhishthira says, correct. Very difficult. Therefore, Mahajano, Yena Katasa Panta. So here's a Mahajan who made some wrong selections on the menu. No, we're not supposed to follow that. We're supposed to understand from the pages of the Bhagavatam, and especially from our acharyas, how to understand what the Lord wanted to show. Although understanding the plan of the Lord is not accessible, except through bhakti, at least to some degree. To some degree, the plan of the Lord is accessible. And even that is mysterious, what to speak of what's not so accessible. Mysterious Supreme Lord and His plan. Through bhakti, to some extent, one can understand, as the Lord reveals to the bhakta. And we look to those great authorities like Bhishmadev to properly understand. We don't imitate. We try to learn from them. Big difference. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishmadev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord. Now there's another layer, and that's a rasa layer, which is the will of the Lord. A rasa layer is Bhishmadev's, it's nice, understanding. Bhishmadev's rasa with Krishna, eternal rasa with Krishna, is dasya, servant. That's his happiness. That's his rasa. And in the mood of dasya, he understands the Lord's desire to have a chivalrous exchange. So he raises his hand and volunteers, I'll provide you that chivalrous exchange. I know how much you love the Pandavas. Therefore, I'll take the side against the Pandavas. So you and I can have an exchange where you can experience chivalrous rasa. And his vow to kill Arjun. He knows he can't kill Arjun. He knows the Lord will break his vow to not fight, showing yet another greatness in addition to the chivalrous exchange with Krishna, and another revelation about the glorious quality of Krishna. Krishna's Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala means he shows Krishna places in the topmost position his affection for his devotee above everything else. Even his vow, I shall not fight. he's prepared to break his vow in favor of his devotee and protecting his devotee. We don't break vows. But when the Lord protecting the devotee is at risk, he'll protect his devotee and break his vow. Now, it so happened that by his own providential arrangement, it happened in such a way he didn't attack Bhishma, because the conch sounded at the end of the day as the sun was setting. And there's so many other exchanges where Krishna made it appear as if the sun was setting, but it hadn't set. And then the light of the sun was still there, so fighting went on. He is the controller, showing by his pastimes his, you could say, sense of humor, or his position as the supreme controller, and controlling even those that are dharmic. But his special focus is upon his devotee, showing affection and kindness upon his devotee. What to speak of those devotees that have very strong devotion and affection for him, he reciprocates in kind. It's just his nature. We heard this last night. Where Krishna came into the cave where Muchukunda was, because A and B. Muchukunda was Bhakta. And Muchukunda, B, he had a strong desire to see Krishna with faith in the words of Bhargamuni, that the day will come we will see Krishna. So he was, where's Krishna, where's Krishna? He wanted darshan of Krishna. And where did that idea and the intense desire to have darshan of Krishna come from? It came from association with the devotee. So we also have association of devotees. Our founder Acharya, pure devotee. And we hear from him various things. And if the heart is receptive, then the same strong desire. We had this nice discussion, really nice, how Hari Parshad Prabhu was discussing this Antar Darshan and Bahir Darshan. And especially suited for this age is the Antar Darshan, because we're not so qualified. We not having eyes anointed with the salve of love, which is the means by which one can see the form of the Lord. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadaiva Hridayesha Vilopayanti. So we don't have that Premanjana capacity. So what to do? Like Muchukunda. The day will come. Prabhupada has said that for all of us. The day will come. If A, then B. If you serve Krishna with great love, it is specifically speaking in the deity form, but otherwise also. You serve Krishna very faithfully, one day he'll come before you and say, I'm like this. Now it takes hankering from our side. The desire to be so much in our relationship with Krishna that we're not impatient. That's a disqualifier, being impatient, but being enthusiastic is a qualifier. So being enthusiastic and patient at the same time, that's quite a mix. But one that has that capacity or that qualification, one day Krishna will show. himself, as he did to Muchukunda. And the next narration we're going to hear is Rukmini. That's the next chapter coming up. Krishna's marriage with Rukmini. There's 3 chapters of that. She just heard about Krishna from Narada, and that was it. She not only wanted to see Krishna, she wanted to be his wife, his queen, just by hearing. Just by hearing. That's how it starts. Hearing from a qualified, from Narada Muni or Garga Muni or a great devotee, an elevated devotee, just hearing. Now, obviously, Muchukunda is a special soul. More special than us, for sure. And Rukmini, obviously, is a special, she's not even a soul. She's Shakti Tattva. So, but the principle, we don't imitate, but the principle is just by hearing about Krishna. That's the plan for this visit, is Krishna's pastimes. And he's all attractive, and he's all powerful, and he's very loving. And it's very purifying and elevating of consciousness to hear. Just like parents are really eager to have their children hear Krishna book stories, because it puts Krishna in their mind. And the all-attractive Krishna is in their thoughts. And it's very, very pleasing to parents to hear their child speak the story that they just heard, or heard, so many times. It's natural. So Krishna enjoys us hearing about his pastimes and remembering his pastimes and pondering over some of the details of the pastimes, or the wonderfulness of the Lord and his wonderful devotees. It's part of awakening of our dormant Krishna consciousness. Because otherwise we're going to be hearing something, and that something is going to fill our thoughts. It's the cleansing process. Bhagavad Dharma is resting on sound. And sound awakens spiritual consciousness and cleanses the other kind. So sometimes, one of the lessons here is we may find ourselves feeling sad, or some other emotion like that, because of the turn of events. And the turn of events that we could have stopped anyways, even if we made some other choices than the choices we made. The turn of events, if there's a plan of the Lord, it's just the plan of the Lord. It doesn't mean we become complacent, but when it comes to circling back to something that was an earlier verse, when some misfortune comes, there are 3 things that we can evaluate. Not how it came out, the way that it came out, but was there some deficiency on my side? This is the introspection part. And 3 territories. I'll end with this. The 3 are, it's in 2 verses. No, it's 1 verse and then 2 purports. If our activities are under the codes of the Vedas or not. 2, if applying those codes of the Vedas was under the direction of qualified Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And 3, if when applying the codes of the Vedas under the direction of qualified Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, was it our intention to please the Supreme Lord? And in Yudhishthira's case, we can check all 3 boxes. And therefore, there's no cause for lamentation. Now, it doesn't mean that he feels really happy to see so many people dead, or is happy to see Grandfather Bhishma lying in a bed of arrows, doesn't mean there's the outcome is it appears to be joy filled, but no cause for lamentation for sure. No cause for lamentation. And if there's any one of those boxes that you can't check or need to improve on, that's where your attention goes. Not to the turn of events and how you feel about the turn of events. You look to those three areas of your devotional life. Again, codes of the Vedas are what's governing what you do. Second is applying those codes of the Vedas. We'll use this word virtue because Prabhupada does. Virtuous activities under the guidance of qualified Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And three, that all those activities are performed with the intention of pleasing Krishna. Now the third one is the one that helps the correct misalignment, if there's misalignment. The strength of doing A and B is C, is to remember Krishna and please Krishna. And if something is skewed in the lower stages, that's the potency or power that can make the course correction going forward in time. Say it negatively. Without that third purpose, the intention of pleasing Krishna, everything is unstable. Even if you get it close one time or some number of times, it's still incomplete. It is going to shift just through passage of time. The bhakti principle is the strength that moves things towards the right destination. That always needs refinement and strengthening and elevation and purification. That's our devotional principle of life. Okay. 10 after 8. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Bhishmadev Maharaj. This question came up in our study group when we were reading the passing away of Bhishmadev, that Kripacharya also was on the wrong side. But not all the people on the Kaurava side was not killed, but Kripacharya was also on the wrong side. Also, he was involved in unfairly killing Abhimanyu too. But he was not killed in the war, so that question came up in our study group, so I just wanted.
The statement is clear, the question is not clear. What's the question? Why?
Why?
Same. The same is the Lord had a plan, and to discern the plan is beyond a normal person's capacity, but he wanted to teach. And, so he's on the other side. There's not the deep, but he was maintained. He's a Brahmana, but he was maintained. And so he's obliged, because he was maintained by those who are maintaining him. He's obliged. It's a dharmic principle. So why continue to be maintained by people who are diabolical? Get out of that situation. He didn't. Because there's a plan. So you have to go down. Even a great soul, if they don't align themselves to the principles of Dharma, because here, not like he didn't know their wickedness. Vidura knew their wickedness, and he spoke. Drona didn't. He could have, he should have, he didn't. Now, why didn't he? Plan of the Lord. He could have, he didn't. So what to do? You have, when you take some, so you speak or you leave the place. If there's something that's just unconscionable, and murder plots are unconscionable. Not like, social faux pas. It's, he could have, should have, didn't. And then he fought with them because he was being maintained by them, further. And then, further downstream, when he was so attached to his son, and in addition to being ganging up on Abhimanyu, one of the kings who did that, one of the soldiers, not king, soldiers that did that, finished. And then another lesson, so it's the Yudhisthira saying Ashwatthama is dead. And, what he did when he heard Ashwatthama was dead. So getting Yudhisthira to do what Krishna wanted is part of what Krishna wanted. To teach something. He was part of that. Now, is he a great soul or not? He's a great soul. But what? So if he's a great soul, why is he in a compromised position? That's the question. Why? Why is he in this compromised position? Some purpose Krishna had, so he made some wrong choices. Fundamental. And there's consequences for fundamental mistakes. Then, another is those who were killed by Krishna or by Krishna's devotees in Krishna's presence, they achieved liberation. So he was fast-tracked to liberation. Along the way, making some wrong choices that provided Krishna with a way of making course correction because of his wrong choices.
Another question or comment is...
the sound is the volume?
The volume is not working, Maharaj.
Huh?
It is not working, I think, the phone.
Try.
About the time, Maharaj. Time moves things.
Time is...
moves things in the material world. Everything is moved by time.
Everything is moved by time.
But it's very hard or inconceivable. In the spiritual world, there is no influence of time.
No influence of time as we know it. There's influence of eternal time for sure, but not time as we know it. And that's inconceivable. Ponder on it and you'll good luck. Something else? You have something? Okay. Online?
No, no,
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. This mridanga will sound better if you put something that's warm near the big head, and then it'll dry out and stretch. And when it's humid like this, it sounds like it sounds
I will
today.
do it.